You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right, all right. Welcome back to Public Comment. I'm hosting with my good friend Malachi Barrett, but this is Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different. And you know, every week here at Public Comment, we're going to talk about the beat of what's happening in municipal politics for the city of Detroit. So municipal means the city stuff. The city stuff can definitely connect to the state stuff. And the state stuff can definitely connect to the federal stuff. And the federal stuff can definitely connect to the international stuff. But this is really what will impact so many residents throughout the city of Detroit. So, without any further ado, the person that's at every city council meeting and also on the beat of what's happening in the city, Malachi Barrett, how are you today at Bridge Detroit?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Wait, there we go.
All right, I'm back. I'm doing good. Yeah,
Yes,
it all
sir.
starts here, like you're saying. It all starts at the local level, man.
Yeah, so much in local. And today's show, we're dedicating to something that when we first met seems to be the topic that most Detroiters always talk about. It's the overassessed taxes. And we'll get in a little bit more into that. But the other day at City Council, Council President Mary Sheffield uplifted that there needs to be more done to repay Detroit residents that were homeowners that were overassessed with their property taxes for a period of time. And I'm going to get into all of these details, but let's just talk a little bit about the tone of what was happening and just the response, not necessarily the details, but the tone as Mary Sheffield was speaking to this.
Yeah, so basically the city council yesterday took a kind of incremental step to give people who are overassessed a little benefit. That they increased the bonus that you can get through Motor City Match, the small business like grant funding program, and this is part of a few things that they've done, little programs, kind of preferences to programs that they've opened to overassessed homeowners in lieu of being able to give direct payments to to compensate people for what they were overtaxed, and in lieu of doing some kind of like specialized tax credit for people, which are the two big things that people have really been asking for. Like, give me my money back that you took from me, or let me make that money back over a period of years by giving me a tax break. And the council president said that this is obviously not the end game. They want to get to a point where they're doing cash payments or something more substantial, but this is kind of all they can do within the constraints of the law. And so this is kind of incremental progress as they work through legal challenges that have continued to kind of hold up what is possible. The city finance department and city lawyers have been pretty adamant that it would actually be illegal to give some kind of like compensatory fund to overtaxed homeowners or a special tax credit for them. And the state attorney general has not weighed in on this, as folks had requested a couple of years back. So we're kind of stuck in this moment where council is doing small things that they can, but they recognize that that's really not enough for people. They're also just feeling like they're working within the constraints that they have, I suppose.
And also, council member Callaway, my council member in District 2, spoke to this because one of the things uplifted by Callaway was residents are consistently bringing this up, that this is the hot button issue. So we met for the collaboration of Tell Us Detroit during that time a couple years back, really exploring what could be done with ARPA funding. Detroit is Different and Bridge Detroit connected. We did a series of community meetings that were captured. It was cool. And one of the number one things uplifted in every one of those meetings was what will happen about my overassessed property taxes. So now let's kind of go in the time machine of so much of this. You've been covering this for a long time, but even before we get to you covering this and the organizations, in 2017 was when this report was uplifted first, January 31st, 2017. Mayor Mike Duggan speaks on behalf of Detroit's tax assessor, Alvin Horn, and said that for the first time in a long time, we can finally make assessments of what's happening in taxes. This report focused on the years 2009 through 2015. That the assessor's office at the time said, hey, over 50% have been over assessed throughout this time. This definitely coincides so much with, as people say, the tax crisis that was going on, the Great Recession at the time, but even more so than the Great Recession. I mean, we look at communities like mine where so many people have left and what that was. So furthermore comes a report through Detroit City, the Detroit News. The Detroit News did a heck of an investigative report on this, to collaborate with the assessor and kind of put some numbers on everything. And those numbers came up to $600 million, from what was found in the report from the news. That connection, when we think about overtaxed homeowners, $600 million. What that was, it was on average like overassessment, they say, of $3,700 per homeowner over that time, which they could say, okay, in that span of those years was worth more than what the property was worth in the first place. 173,000 Detroit homes were reviewed in the study by the Detroit News. Of that, 92% of them were overassessed between 2010 and 2016. And that was that $3,700 or $3,800 average of the overassessed. Show about 79,000 properties have had the same owner since 2010, meaning that those homes took the full brunt of the taxation. So that basically means that if you were in that home, chances are you stayed in that home and you were being overassessed in your taxes. And more than likely, if you're staying in that home, that means you're paying those taxes or in programming to pay those taxes and not have it foreclosed on, which was also running concurrent, when we look at the Detroit Land Bank and so many other things. At least 59,000 homes that were overtaxed still have back taxes. That was according to this story in 2010. And this was in the Detroit News too. So the Detroit News has covered this extensively. Bridge Detroit has picked up a whole lot, but a lot even in your reporting, where we look back at, it's so unique. You have two stories from the same on the same calendar date, like back to back. So you have a story in 2022 about this, and you have a story in 2023 about this on April 11th. Ain't that something?
That's
like
funny.
the 411. So I mean, if you stick to the way you've approached this, you'll probably be there in the 411 again. And it's back to the city can't repay, because that's really been the resounding story connected to this. It's back to following the rules. And I have a lot of take on this. But before I get to the take, I definitely want you to speak to really both these stories. You straight up gave the story of what counsel for the city said about this, and you gave the story from city council saying, like, all right, what can we do to give some relief and address this issue?
Yeah, so this is kind of the crux of the situation I was referring to earlier. The city's attorneys have said that you can't repay residents who were overtaxed. It would be illegal to give them a lending of credit as it's defined in the law, and the statute of limitations is up on appealing over assessment. There's this whole process through which you have to appeal to the board review, and you can challenge your assessments basically. And we didn't know the scope of this until years later, so people missed that window to appeal. And also, apparently it would be illegal to give direct payments. So that's what the city attorney said. The council has responded by creating preference in different programs. They've allocated surplus funding to basically shore up existing programs so that people who have been over assessed get a preference. And that applies to like land bank sales of houses. It applies to a lot of different kind of smaller programs like home repair programs. And it's important to note too that a lot of these also have their own requirements. So like home repair, you have to be a senior or disabled person. Motor City Match, like if you're not a small business owner, like that doesn't really help you. If you're not trying to like start a business, it doesn't help you. And they're not always connected to like home ownership. So that's like, there still seems to be kind of a missing gap there. And especially it's coming up now in these conversations about reparations and identifying things that the city did to directly harm Black Detroiters, which have been, the numbers on this bearing out in an 80% Black city, right? Like this definitely affected Black people more than any other group. And, it's something that's been kind of identified as a harm that needs to be made up for. But the real question is, how are they going to be able to do that? And, Mary Sheffield has said they're still looking into this, but Whitfield Calloway is right when she says that people come every day to city council. I mean, I hear them in every meeting talking about this. So people are very frustrated by this. And, the relief is nice, but I just don't think it really goes far enough.
I definitely think that this is one of those things that just it lays on people. There's a group, Coalition for Property Tax Justice. It's a collective of 15 different grassroots organizations that have come together to accomplish the goals of stop unconstitutional property tax assessments in Detroit, compensate Detroiters who were who were overtaxed by the city and experience tax foreclosure, ensure homeowners who the city illegally overtax, who qualify for tax exemption, do not lose their homes. So it's like protecting their homes from people from losing their homes, making right the people that lost their homes, and then also stopping this from happening in the future. So this coalition has come together with a lot of those grassroots groups, and a lot of those people, if you can even just see in that picture, are some of those people that will almost show up at most engagement community-based events advocating for things. But the reality of this is it's a couple different blind spots or things not like understood but not highlighted the right way. One, let's go to the first thing. To 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 do a wrong, right? And then turn around and say that I know I did this wrong to you. And my bad for doing that wrong to you. But just based on the rules of how I do things, I can't repay you the right way. That already falls in the lines of like, okay, you broke the rules to overassess the taxes. All right. So now you're logically telling me now you got to follow the rules. Why weren't you following the rules in the first place? You know how they say ignorance is not a defense of the law? That's basically pleading ignorance. Because let's just say ignorance. Let's give that as opposed to like being more conspiratory and say that this was supposed to happen. Since then, there's these tools that you can look at and see where your assessment is and if everything's fair now, but that's moving forward. So this is where it kind of comes, I guess, into play of like, who are these tools being made for? And it's very interesting around this boost of new Detroiters coming into Detroit. A lot is being honored and set up and value for the people that Detroit's looking to attract, as opposed to honoring the people that already live here. So then you look at a community like mine. Like I remember my babysitter, Miss McAfee, that house is torn down now. Is one of those homes that she lost to tax foreclosure, right? So Miss McAfee that's passed away, which I think that part of her death, like I can't tie two and two together, but she lived in a home to become an aging senior citizen. She needed to leave that home. She ended up in not the best facility that was affordable through her family, and soon after died. I believe Miss McAfee, I don't know if she'd still be alive today. All of this happened in that window of 2000, and like she was losing a home in like 2010. By 2011, Miss McAfee is moving. 2012, Miss McAfee passes away. I think that family right there, it's classic. And now the property is torn down and everything, but it's like, that was my babysitter's house. You know what I'm saying? Like these are people I know. I know what that did to that family, the reverberating issues that connected to that. So I don't even know how you begin to make right situations like that. But I definitely know it's going to take some money. And if the city was cashing those checks and those allocations associated with this, and I believe that probably was during the time where we're paying back what I still honor, as my godmother said, an unfair, unfair. What was that? When the city was owing all of that money to the state, that was completely unfair too. So it's like we look at like overseas tax money paying back corporations for debts that the city never really honored to the state of Michigan, when the state of Michigan never honored the revenue sharing that it was supposed to honor from the Cobo Hall deal years ago. you know so not just the Cobo Hall deal that basically set up things for non-Detroit residents to pay less in tax to work in the city of Detroit, and that is extremely abundant now. If the people that worked in the city of Detroit were paying the taxes that they were supposed to pay by working in the city of Detroit but being non-residents, we wouldn't have a lot of these issues. The city bankruptcy directly connects to this. So basically you're overassessing residents to pay back a bankruptcy that was false in the first place, because the state owes the city more money it all the way around. So it's like, they're taking money out my socks and my pockets when you're the person that stays in a home, sort of like me, with two properties, and you're wrestling with what this goes through. And then you look at the 2009 to 2015 window, and then they're following every rule to the T, meaning like it's a timetable on when the debt, when you got to say that, hey, you guys did me wrong, and file that paperwork. It's 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 basically they can't give you direct cash payments for the first place of this as well, and all of this that can't be done when it's been honored that this was a wrong from our mayor, you know and every other politician too. So it's great to hear that the discussion still exists and it's being heard through a lot of the politicians locally here. But we have to also keep it real that every time you go out into the community, this is like going to be the number one issue that I hear. You know, so and the responses are not the types of responses that lead to people not continuing to feel like this is being wronged again and again, because they know they were wrong, but it's all these rules why they can't repair the wrong. So I'm ranting, but now I want to give you the floor to respond, because I'm sure you're hearing this. And what's the type of responses the politicians are giving? What's your take on this? You've been following this story big time, and that's why I said let's just dedicate the whole show to it.
Yeah, I think, the estimates out there were that 1 in 10 homes that were foreclosed on between, I think it's 2011 and 2015, were caused by this. So, huge wave of foreclosures. A lot of people overcharged by like thousands of dollars. The average was 3,700. I've talked to people that it's as high as like $8,000. I've run into people who are raising this issue at the reparations task force meetings who, talk about how this has impacted their family and cut off generational wealth. And it's kind of another example of, municipal harms that have blocked access to home ownership and cut off, a really important source of wealth for Black families in Detroit. And so all of that is being kind of put together. I want to read a comment from a resident on this. She says that I'm concerned that the city didn't need new laws to take illegally the money from residents. However, new laws are needed to give it back. There's all this controversy about the city overtaxing the residents and not being held accountable by correcting this act. So I think that's a big piece of it, right? Like, you illegally took money, but we need a change in state law for you to make that whole. And you guys are getting away with not being held accountable, essentially, is what people are saying. And, it is true that, we have specialized tax credits for all kinds of interest. So I was talking with Sheffield about this a little bit on Tuesday after the meeting, that, and she agreed. She was like, we have tax credits for business incentives and for homestead properties and all these different things. Why couldn't we create a tax incentive or a tax break for people who are overassessed? A lot of that stuff is created by state law. So I feel like that's kind of a big issue if we were maybe to lean on legislators and try to understand if anybody's thinking about this. We already have had several kind of tax proposals come forward in Detroit that haven't made it all the way through. So I don't know what kind of appetite there is in the legislature for this, but that kind of dichotomy of like, you broke the law, but the law needs to change to make it right is very, very frustrating for a lot of people who just don't, I mean, it's you took all this money out of their pocket. It had a huge impact on people. So yeah, I think we're going to continue to keep hearing from residents about this. I don't know that there's a clear answer in the future. I think some of these benefits programs are helpful, but the damage is really done in a lot of cases. And is every year that moves forward. I mean, we're in 2024 now. The end of this happened in 2016. I mean, we're coming up on 10 years now, past all of this stuff happening. So I don't know if that makes it more difficult, but I think a lot of folks in city administration are kind of moving on from this. And residents are definitely not moving on.
Yeah, because that seems to be the overwhelming narrative connected to this. Yeah, the residents are bringing this up. If you go to community meetings, this will get brought up. Like, this is the linchpin discussion where it's like that. It was the bankruptcy before this, and water also, but this is one of those huge elephants in the room. And I'm not necessarily saying that people have let up from the bankruptcy discussions and the water discussions, but this is one of those things that just lays heavy, and it looms when it comes to city of Detroit as one of the worst things ever. And you just said it best. It's like you broke the law, but now we got to change the law for you to repair what was wrong for you breaking the law, and you're the law itself. Like, this is circular logic, it makes no sense. This is a chart, this is definitely a chart. And it's so tough. It's so tough.
We've seen a bounce back so I mean, a lot of this was caused by the steep decline in property values in the recession, and the assessor's office was all screwed up and they weren't able to keep pace with it. So basically they overvalued houses that were losing value very quickly. We've seen a real turnaround in terms of property values every year. The mayor does a press conference where he talks about all of the growth in property values. So it's really like I don't know if that's like a missed opportunity. I mean, from your perspective, like people that lost homes and then we're not able to hang on to them. Didn't they lose a lot of value that has been created since then?
I didn't even add that to it, like, in a direct business way. I look at it like knowing so many people that walked away from properties there. Like, my one of my best friends, Sterling Toes. I'm actually wearing, like, the project he did with Bodie James, Manger on McNichols. It's like a big hip hop project or whatever. But their family home was lost. I mean, I can just go down the names of people that lost because it's overtaxation. So yes, it's the value that could have been earned, but it's also the fact that I live in one of these neighborhoods where so many of the homes were walked away from, and the banks and a lot of the city properties, especially the city properties or what the county was controlling, weren't kept up either. That was the other elephant in the room. It's like people were foreclosed on just for nothing to be there to end up becoming a space and place where people usually would, possibly scrap the house for whatever they could. It becomes a more dangerous space. And like Miss McAfee's house needed to be torn down after it went through those iterations of being scrapped for the aluminum siding, all the metals inside the house. And then, possibly, who knows, squatting in there and the safety measures of what's connected to it. So now it's costing the city more money to even manage it. It's like, keep these people in their homes. Like, keep the people in their homes. I personally think that that's something I really stand on. If the person across the street from me pays $1 in taxes and I'm paying 1,000 because I have the bandwidth to cover that, I could care less, because that's the other, I think, part that plays this role. It's like, don't you want that person to pay? No, I want a neighbor. I want a neighbor that wants to be in my community. That's way more important than anything else, especially when we look at the other landscape of this is our cities giving our tax money to billionaires to do business in the city to bolster opportunity for people. I think it's a better opportunity to just keep people in their house.
Somebody called it reverse reparations. The tax breaks that are given out. They were specifically talking about, I think, the Tom Gore's Pistons project, which some more tax breaks were approved yesterday. But yeah, the idea that that's like a reverse reparation for
Yeah.
businesses is interesting.
Yeah, and it's like, and all of this can be done and designed and set up where a corporation can get those direct payments from the government, but the people that were harmed by this can't. Like, this is what makes it so frustrating for so many residents that feel like no one's advocating for them, because it just takes so much red tape and litigation, and this needs to happen for that. I mean, reparations included, like all of these things. It's just like reparations. You know what I'm saying? Hey, my bad. We shouldn't have did that to you. And it's like, all right, so are you gonna make that right? I mean, in reality, we got to go to what and how, and we can't make a law that goes directly to a group of people that we directly harmed. And it's like, did our government directly choose to harm this group of people? And let's not even go back to enslavement. If we're talking about municipal, my deed restrictions on both the properties, this home and the home next door, say that no black person can own, well, no Negro can own this home. So it's like that right there. And I would probably urge most of you all to look up, like, the study your deed, and you'll probably see that in your deed. You know what I'm saying? So it's like property, ownership, value, quantifying, and what's fair and what's balanced. This day of reckoning and the frustrations of the people, I just wonder, like, how many more people will become more apathetic, believe less in these systems, and not expect anything to be for them. And that defeatist attitude that becomes pervasive in waves in communities like mine, I hope people don't have that. But then again, when a person straight up tells you a story like this, how do you, I mean, what do you have? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we just straight up pull somebody from a whole nother city and we told them what happened, it's like, all right, 2017, it was announced. The tax assessor said, hey, people was overtaxed. We think about 50%. Local newspaper found out, a couple years later, that it was way more than that. Many people lost their homes. You said 1 to 10 out of all the foreclosed were connected to this, right? So that means 10% of the foreclosures were connected to this as well. On average, a lot of it sometimes amounts to more than the property value when you look at just this window of 2009 to 16. What do you think? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then a person would turn around and say, all right, so I'm sure that the government stepped in and did something for them people. No.
The last thing I guess I want to bring up is that, this lending of credit idea, the idea that you can't give general fund dollars to individuals for some purpose. I believe that only applies to general funds. So what the city has done in the past, what the council was able to do in the last budget cycle, for example, is they took surplus dollars and used it to beef up some programs so that more people would get access to them, specifically the overtaxed homeowners. That's how they funded that, right? That could mean that surplus funds are, a use that, it wouldn't be enough money. Unfortunately, I think that's kind of the part of the problem, is that, the surplus every year is like $10 million or something, and you need a lot more than that to get to 600. Especially if you start to kind of calculate, inflation changes and what is the actual true value of, the harm that was caused. But as we kind of talk about reparations, other cities have found things to do, like Evanston, Illinois, which kicked off the whole reparations movement, where they funded a down payment housing program by using marijuana taxes. So there could be things that the city's able to do. But again, I mean, asking for a new tax or to take a portion of tax revenue from the marijuana, I believe those, definitely creating a new tax would take changes in state law. The portion of taxes we get from marijuana sales currently is, it just came through, I think it's like $20 million a year or something like that. Most of that goes into administration of licenses. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, there are some small pools of money that would provide some potential flexibility. I think there are some solutions, but it doesn't seem to get, anywhere near like the scope of this problem. And I just don't know how you come up with that money. Like, that just seems like a really tough aspect of this too, right?
Yeah, I would say the bigger elephant, tougher dynamic of this is it's a lot of money that's being shelled out for a lot of these other projects,
Mm-hmm.
these public private relationships that are using tax dollars for things like that. So
Well, I
even though
guess
I know it's a lot different, and it's like, well, development is different in this pocket of money and that pocket of money. It's you know what I'm saying? You're like the parent that where the kid's like, yo, I just really want this toy. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And then it's like, and then you're the parent that's like, okay, as soon as something exists, and then the kid sees you buy, yourself some different, like, whatever. I don't want to say adult toys because people will be like, but like they see you buy a new video game for yourself. They see you buy some brand new sneakers for yourself. They see you buy, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, all right, so at what point am I going to get my Ninja Turtle? You know what I'm saying? Like what's going on here?
Well, let's get like real philosophical. Let's go into a place where like I have no idea whether this is possible or not. But we capture taxes from development, from property growth in the downtown area, right? Mm-hmm. We capture a portion of those taxes and then we redirect it into that zone,
downtown,
right?
BDA.
So I don't know. Who's to say? We should maybe ask some people about this. Who's to say we couldn't say, let's capture a portion of taxes from new developments, maybe of a particular size, and use that to fuel a reparations fund, or use that to fuel a fund for overtaxed homeowners? Like, is that possible? I don't know that people are talking about it, but
that's what's so funny if you saying that, and I'm barging in, is because that's what I was saying on the first finance committee meeting that was open in the reparations task force, because I'm a member of the finance committee or group, and I was like, yo, the DDA should just be the reparations fund for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Like you can divert it, but like, let's just use this precedent, 2009 to 2017. Let's just lock in, or 2009 to 16. So let's lock in for 7 years. The DDA get diverted into this reparations fund instead. Like, I know that that's extremely provocative. I know that it's going to the state and changing law, but it's a big pool and pocket of money connected to that. I'm pretty sure at that risk, yeah, it's going to be some developers that don't want to do business in Detroit anymore, but so be it. If the only reason you're doing business here is because you're getting free money, you're not really doing business here in the first place, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of pie in the sky at this point, so I don't know. I mean, definitely. A lot of that would be would require some pretty heavy political will to probably change there, but
and that's half the problem, because it didn't require any damn political will to overassess people. For me, when I was overassessed on my taxes, all it took was, you know what, we ain't about to drop the property values that low. Charge his ass, and me, all my neighbors, Miss McAfee that lost her home, all the people that lost their home. It didn't take a lot of will for that. It didn't take a lot of political savviness. It just took people. And then that's the other thing. Nobody went to jail for this or nothing. Nobody's even, it's just my bad. That's a big elephant in the room.
Yeah. I don't want to leave people in this state of like, well, and that's all. But I truly don't know where we kind of go from here. I mean, the city council is continuing to navigate these legal questions. The council president has acknowledged that what they've done isn't enough. And I don't know, we're gonna have to see what happens, I suppose. I think the public pressure is, like we've been saying from the beginning, is not going to go away. So how that turns into organization, how that affects city council races in 2025, how that affects the reparations conversation, I think all of that still is in play.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, Coalition for Property Tax Justice is something to check out. Get to their website. It's a collection of a lot of organizers that have been working in this work. And with that, we close out public comment this week. I'm sure we're going to talk about this again because it's such a big topic, but I wanted to give full bandwidth and then pontificate and rant on it. But thank God that I got Malachi with me to keep everything in the bumpers. And because this one it's so tough and it just makes no damn sense. But how's everything going? Let the people know.
Yeah, thanks for everybody that came out to our Meet the Reporters event this week. It was really awesome to see people, and we talked about this and a lot of other issues that I'm going to be following up on. So, yeah, check out our newsletter, bridgedetroit.com. Every Wednesday, you get the City Council Notebook. We're doing something really unprecedented right now, too, I should talk about. We've partnered with Outlier Media and the Detroit Documenters to cover every budget hearing. There's 46 of them. Every department and these various authorities come to the city council to talk about how they're going to spend your money. We thought it was important to actually put some reporting resources behind that. I don't really think anybody has covered these as extensively as we are right now. And every Monday, you will get a newsletter specifically about that and kind of a breakdown of all these various meetings. So if you sign up on bridgedetroit.com, it's free. It shows up in your inbox. If you don't like email, just go to bridgedetroit.com. We're on the social media as well. But yeah, just appreciate, hearing from people about what's important to them. And we always adjust our coverage based on that. So
Definitely. With that all being said, check out Detroit is Different. A lot of cool stuff, but more of this collaboration keeps going. And thank you for everybody tuning in the public comment. Y'all see it's growing. We staying in the rhythm. We'll check y'all. Peace.